Under the bright golden sunlight of a March afternoon, Memorial Park in Willow Creek, Pennsylvania, looks like a vibrant painting in the heart of the small town. The old oak trees stretch their shade over the lush green grass, where the laughter of children echoes from the playground. Laura Bennett, 36, sits on a weathered wooden bench, holding a stack of 8th grade tests. Her gentle brown eyes are fixed on her 2 children playing. Emma, 9, with her blonde hair tied in a ponytail, climbing up the slide, and Liam, 7, running around the swing set, shouting with joy. Laura smiled, taking a deep breath of the fresh air filled with the scent of wildflowers from the nearby fields. This had been her weekend routine for the past 3 years, ever since she moved to Willow Creek after her divorce. As an English teacher at Willow Creek High School, she had found peace in this town, a place where everyone knew each other's names. With the sound of birds singing drowned out the sparse traffic on Main Street. She flipped a page of the test, her red pen circling a spelling mistake, thinking to herself, life isn't perfect, but here it feels complete. About 50 feet away, a few other parents were chatting near a small fountain, their voices blending with the gentle sound of water trickling. A light breeze swept through, carrying a few dry leaves that danced across the ground, and Laura looked up, feeling a slight chill that hinted at the approaching dusk. But then, from a distance, another sound pierced the tranquility, a low rumble, like thunder echoing from the end of the road, leading into the park. She frowned, her hand pausing on the page. The noise grew louder, clearer, no longer a natural sound. It was a roar of engines, more than one, but many, blending into a threatening symphony. Laura set down the stack of papers, stood up, and squinted toward the park entrance about 200 yards away. Others began to notice too. Conversations faded into silence, leaving only the carefree laughter of children. Then she saw them. 7 shiny motorcycles, thick tires rolling over the gravel path, the chrome gleaming in the afternoon sun. The Steel Reapers gang has arrived. Laura was no stranger to that name. This small town, though peaceful, couldn't escape the whispers about the notorious motorcycle gang from the 3 counties a group said to be devoid of mercy. They rarely showed up in public like this, usually lurking around abandoned industrial sites or seedy bars off Highway 81. But today, they were here, right in the middle of the park, and Laura felt a chill run down her spine. The first car came to a stop in the parking lot about 100 feet from the amusement park, the engine falling silent, leaving a heavy stillness in the air. The leader stepped out, his black leather boots crunching loudly on the gravel, making a menacing thud-thud sound. Victor Blade. Russo, a name even the oldest folks in Willow Creek avoided mentioning, stood there, towering over 6 feet tall, muscles rippling beneath a leather jacket emblazoned with a fiery red snake on the chest. His cold eyes, hidden behind dark sunglasses, scanned the park like a predator sizing up its prey. Laura took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. She stepped forward a few paces and called out, "Emma, Liam, come here to Mommy." Her voice was still gentle, but it carried an undeniable urgency. The 2 kids turned around, looking at their mother with confusion, then slowly started running toward her. But before they could get close, Victor and the other 6 had already begun to move, their leather shoes crushing the grass as they headed straight for the playground. Other parents reacted faster than Laura expected. A father hurriedly pulled his child away from the swing and ran toward a nearby SUV. A mother screamed for her child, her voice trembling, while a few others quietly bowed their heads and hurried out through the emergency exit. But Laura didn't run. She couldn't. Emma and Liam had come to her side, their tiny hands gripping their mothers tightly, their wide eyes filled with fear as they watched the strange men approach. Victor stopped about 10 feet away from Laura, his lips curling into a smile that held no warmth. "Hello, teacher," he said, his voice deep and slow, as if savoring each word. "Laura Bennett, right? Teaching English at the high school, living alone with these 2 adorable kids." He tilted his head, glancing at Emma and Liam, causing both of them to shrink back behind their mother. Laura felt her heart pounding, but she stood tall, not allowing her voice to tremble. "We're leaving," she replied, trying to maintain the calm demeanor of a teacher who had faced stubborn students before. "Please let us through." Victor laughed, the sound harsh and metallic like clanging metal. "Leave? Oh no, not at all. We're here to have a little chat about protecting the community." He raised his hand, signaling his goons to spread out and block all the main exits. Laura looked around, realizing the park was now empty, leaving only her and the kids facing 7 dark figures. She tightened her grip on Emma and Liam's hands, silently praying. But she had no idea that over 300 miles away, at Fort Irwin Military Base, her brother Ethan Carter had just picked up an emergency signal from the special phone he had given her 2 years ago. A signal she had never used before. And at this very moment, the wheels of fate began to turn, unleashing a storm that Willow Creek had never seen. The memorial park now lay silent like a graveyard, with only the sound of the wind howling through the oak trees and the heavy footsteps of the Steel Reapers echoing. Laura Bennett stood there, gripping Emma and Liam tightly, feeling as if the entire world had shrunk down to this one moment. Victor Blade Russo, the leader of the gang clad in black leather, took a step forward, his boots crushing a dry twig beneath him with a sharp crack. His gaze was locked onto Laura, as if she were the last prey of the day's hunt. Talking about community protection? Laura repeated Victor's words, her voice firmer than she expected, even though her heart was racing in her chest. Willow Creek doesn't need your kind of protection. Sheriff Davis can handle that. She tried to keep her tone calm, just like she used to explain Whitman's poetry to her 8th graders. But this wasn't a classroom. This was reality, and it was getting scarier by the second. Victor tilted his head, a crooked smile on his lips, revealing his bright white teeth under the fading sunlight. Sheriff Davis? That old man? He can barely stand on his shaky legs, let alone protect the whole town. He stepped closer, now just about 5 feet away from Laura, the smell of leather and cigarette smoke wafting into her nose. No, teacher. We're bringing something more reliable. Just a small fee, that's all." Emma snuggled close to her mom, her tiny hand trembling as it clutched the hem of Laura's shirt. "Mom, I want to go home," the little girl whispered, her voice choked with emotion. Liam, though younger, stood a bit taller, his eyes fixed on Victor with a mix of curiosity and fear. Laura tightened her grip on her children's hands, trying to pass on some courage that she herself was running low on. "How much is the fee?" Another voice broke the suffocating silence. Laura turned her head to see Mr. Tom Grayson, the elderly park caretaker with his white hair, walking toward her from about 20 yards away, near his tool cart. He stopped, leaning on his broom, his cloudy eyes shining with determination. To protect what? This park? Or my aching knee here? Victor turned to him, a wide smile on his face, but his eyes remained as cold as ice. "Mr. Tom, right? How long have you been working here? 30 years? It would be a shame if this beautiful park were to be ruined, or if something were to happen to your knee." He emphasized the last word, a stark threat that made Tom grip the broom tighter, even though he didn't respond. Laura saw her chance. She took a small step back, pulling Emma and Liam with her, heading toward the side road leading to the parking lot 30 yards away. But another lanky member of the Steel Reapers, with greasy hair and the nickname Shadow, who she vaguely recognized, caught on to her intentions. He moved as quickly as a leopard, cutting off their escape route, his eyes gleaming with delight. "The teacher asked us a question earlier," Shadow said, his voice low and menacing, "about letting her go. The answer is no. Not until we finish talking about community safety." Laura stopped, her breath coming in quick gasps. She looked around. There was no one left in the park, no more sounds of children laughing, no more chatter from parents. It was just her 2 kids, Old Man Tom, and 7 guys in black leather jackets, closing in like a pack of hungry wolves. Victor stepped closer, just 3 feet away, close enough for her to see the faint scars on his hands. "We're establishing a new order in Willow Creek," he said, his voice slow and deliberate, like he was reading a sentence. "It's simple. Everyone contributes. Everyone stays safe. Schools, parks, stores, they all need us. And you, Laura, are no exception." "What about me?" she asked, her voice sharper now, even though inside she was screaming with fear. "What do you want from me and the kids?" Victor leaned in, close enough that she could feel his hot breath on her face. "Your safety. The safety of the kids." Isn't that what every mother wants? He glanced down at Emma and Liam, making both of them shrink back. You have until Friday to think it over. For the first time, it's just $2,000, a special deal for teachers. After that, it'll be due at the beginning of each month. Don't do anything stupid like telling Davis, or the price will go up a lot. Laura didn't respond. Her hand quietly slipped into her bag, her fingers searching for the phone that Ethan, her brother, had given her 2 years ago. It was a special phone, with an emergency button she had never used. She pressed it firmly, sending a signal she knew would reach Ethan, no matter where he was, Fort Irwin or anywhere else in the U.S. Victor stepped back, signaling to his crew. "We'll be watching," he said, his tone like a deadly promise. "This is just a friendly visit. Next time won't be so pleasant." The roar of motorcycle engines thundered once more as 7 bikes rolled out park, leaving Laura standing there, tightly holding Emma and Liam, her breath trembling in the evening air. She didn't know that over 300 miles away, Ethan Carter had just felt his phone vibrate in his pocket. His steel blue eyes narrowed, and without hesitation, he called his team. "My family is in danger. Get ready." A former Navy SEAL never abandons his own, and Willow Creek was about to witness his wrath. As the sun set over Willow Creek, Pennsylvania, it painted the sky above Memorial Park in vibrant shades of orange mixed with somber purples. Laura Bennett stood still in the open field, holding Emma and Liam tightly in her arms, her eyes following the fine dust left behind by the 7 motorcycles of the Steel Reapers on the gravel road. The roar of the engines faded into the distance, but the echo of Victor Blade, Russo's threat, still rang in her mind. Friday, $2,000. Don't do anything stupid. She took a deep breath, trying to shake off the suffocating feeling that gripped her chest. "Mom, who are they?" Emma looked up, her light blue eyes shining with a mix of fear and curiosity. Liam, though younger, said nothing, just clutched his mother's hand tightly, his lips pressed together as he tried to maintain the brave facade of a 7-year-old boy. Laura bent down, stroking Emma's blonde hair, forcing a smile. "They're just a few people. It's not important, sweetheart. Let's go home." But inside her, that question was gnawing away. What do they want in Willow Creek? She led the 2 kids to the old Honda Civic parked about 30 yards away, her hands trembling as she inserted the key into the ignition. Mr. Tom Grayson, the park caretaker, stood nearby with his tool cart, his eyes following the direction of the Steel Reapers as they moved away. "Be careful, Laura," he said, his voice deep and steady. "They're not here to play around. I've seen them lurking around the old industrial area for weeks now. Something's not right." Laura nodded in thanks but didn't respond. She just wanted to get Emma and Liam home, lock the door tight, and wait for what she hoped would come help from Ethan. The road from the park to Laura's home is less than 2 miles long, but today it feels like it stretches on forever. In the rear-view mirror, she glances back every now and then, half hoping, half fearing to see the headlights of motorcycles flashing behind her. Willow Creek is a small, peaceful town with a population of under 5,000, nestled among the low hills of Pennsylvania. But now, that peace has been shattered, and Laura senses an unusual chill creeping through familiar streets. When they arrive at the small 2-bedroom house on Elm Street, Laura hurriedly pushed Emma and Liam inside, locked the front door, and checked every window lock. She pulled the curtains shut, leaving a small gap just wide enough to peek outside. The street was quiet, with only the sound of the wind rustling through the red maple trees lining the road. But then in the distance, she heard a low rumble of an engine, not close, but enough to make her jump. A motorcycle glided by slowly, its headlights sweeping across her window before disappearing into the darkness. "We will be watching." Victor's words echoed in her mind like a curse. Laura sat down on the sofa, pulling Emma and Liam into her lap. "Mom, are they coming back?" Liam asked, his voice small but steady. She hugged him tightly, whispering, "It's okay. Mom is here. And so is Uncle Ethan." The name of her brother felt like a beacon in the storm. Ethan Carter, the man she knew would never let their family come to harm. But even that faith couldn't erase the bigger question. Why were the Steel Reapers targeting Willow Creek? Why now? In a different corner of town, about 3 miles from Laura's house. The old industrial area lay still under the crescent moon. The abandoned warehouses, with their rusted metal roofs and shattered glass windows, were the usual hangout for steel reapers. Tonight, the beams from flashlights and motorcycle headlights pierced through the darkness, illuminating a corner of the largest warehouse. Victor Blade. Russo stood among his crew, a cigarette dangling from his lips, his eyes fixed intently on the map spread out on the old wooden table. The Willow Creek map, with its streets marked in red ink, resembled a menacing spiderweb. "This town is ours," Victor growled, his voice deep and sharp like a knife's edge. "But it's not just about the money. We're working for others, people who don't like to wait." He pointed to a marked area near the town center, once a coal mine decades ago, now left in ruins. They want something buried underground, and we're the ones clearing the way. Shadow, the tall and cocky one, stood next to Victor, smirking. "Clear the way? You mean make the people kneel and hand over their money?" Victor turned around, his eyes blazing. "It's not just that. They don't pay us thousands of dollars a month just to play the role of enforcers. There's something bigger than both of us combined. They want me to pressure the people into selling their land, stir up trouble, keep everything in chaos. But I don't know everything. All I know is if we don't do it, we won't have a way to survive." Another guy, nicknamed Rusty with bright red hair, chimed in, "But why Willow Creek? What's here besides some old mines and a bunch of country folks?" Victor exhaled a puff of smoke, his voice dropping to a dangerously low tone. "I don't know the details, but I've heard them talking about some Helix project or something from back in the war, buried deep underground. They need us to get our hands dirty, so they can keep their hands clean." Outside the warehouse, about 50 feet away, a black, unmarked truck sat in the shadows. Inside, a man in a gray suit, Daniel Voss, a former Navy intelligence officer now working for a nameless organization, listened intently through surveillance equipment. His eyes were cold, and he jotted down notes quickly on a tablet. "The Steel Reapers are doing well," he muttered to the person next to him, his voice deep and gravelly. "But they don't need to know the whole picture. When the job's done, they'll be wiped out like always." Back at Laura's house, she sat in the dark, the light from her phone casting a glow on her tense face. A message had just come in from Ethan. "I'll be there in 3 hours. Stay safe." She let out a sigh of relief, but the worry still weighed heavily on her. The Steel Reapers weren't just a gang. They were puppets of something bigger, something darker. And Willow Creek, the little town she called home, was teetering on the edge of a storm that no one saw coming. She stood up, pulling the curtains tighter, but through a small gap, she saw another motorcycle glide by, slowly like a reminder. Friday, she thought, they will come back. But she didn't know that beneath the ground of Willow Creek, an ancient secret was waiting to be awakened, and the Steel Reapers were just the first step in a game they could never win. As the sunset descended upon Willow Creek, Laura Bennett stood in the memorial park, gripping Emma and Liam's hands tightly, facing the threat from Victor Blade Russo and the Steel Reapers. But she didn't falter. Within that mother's heart burned a resilient fire, ready to shine brightly to protect her family. That's a strength anyone would admire. Comment, Mom is a warrior, below to support Laura. Laura's journey has just begun, and each of your comments is a spark encouraging her to move forward. Together, we will witness the power of a mother overcoming the darkness. Over 300 miles southwest of Willow Creek, at Fort Irwin Military Base in California, the sun was setting behind the parched sand dunes of the Mojave Desert. Under fiery red twilight, Ethan Carter stood before a group of rookie Navy SEALs, his steel blue eyes scanning each determined young face. At 38, he bore the look of a man who had weathered hundreds of battles, his solid 6'2" frame, neatly cropped brown hair, and faint scars on his left hand telling tales of unforgettable days in SEAL Team 6. Today, he is training for a grueling survival test, traversing 5 miles of rugged terrain in 110-degree heat, armed with just a bottle of water and a knife. "You're not fighting an enemy," he says, his voice deep and steady as rock. "You're fighting yourself. Push through it or give up. There's no third option." The recruits gnawed, sweat streaming down their foreheads, but their eyes shine with respect for a commander who has led missions that even the Pentagon keeps in the shadows. But then, amidst the howling wind sweeping across the desert and the shouts of the young soldiers, a faint vibration from the special phone in Ethan's tactical jacket pocket interrupted his thoughts. He paused, his hand instinctively pulling out the small, unbranded device custom-made for high-level agents. The screen lit up with simple code, H911. His heart raced. It was an emergency signal from Laura, his sister, the one he had told her to use only when there were no other options left. Ethan didn't hesitate. He turned to his assistant, Sergeant Jake Martinez, a veteran SEAL with thick black hair and a deep, warm voice. "Jake, take over this team. I have a family emergency." His voice revealed no emotion, but Martinez, who had fought alongside Ethan to the bloody battlefield of Afghanistan, noticed a subtle shift in his eyes, a rare flicker of worry. "Understood, sir," Martinez replied, not asking any further questions. Ethan nodded and quickly made his way toward the command center, his boots thudding heavily against the cracked, dry ground. In the cool building of the command center, Ethan sat down in front of a secure computer, his fingers flying over the keyboard. He accessed the military data system, searching for any information on Willow Creek, Pennsylvania. The screen lit up with an intelligence report. The Steel Reapers Motorcycle Club was ramping up operations in the three-county area of Pennsylvania. Leading the charge, Victor Russo, known as Blade. Suspected involvement in illegal activities, extortion, threatening civilians, possibly linked to a larger organization. Ethan gritted his teeth, his jaw tightening as he read on. Latest update. This group was spotted at Memorial Park, Willow Creek, this afternoon. "Laura," he murmured, a cold wave of anger rising within him. He knew the Steel Reapers weren't just any ordinary thugs. They were organized. They had a purpose. And now, they had set their sights on his sister and the two kids he loved more than anything in the world. He picked up the phone and called Laura. Through the line, her voice came through, soft yet resolute. "Ethan, they're at the park. They're threatening us." I hit the emergency button. "Stay safe," he replied, his voice as hard as steel. "I'm on my way. I'll be there in 3 hours. Don't leave the house. Lock the door tight." He hung up, not giving her a chance to ask more questions, knowing that time wasn't on their side. He stood up, opened the personal storage cabinet, and pulled out a tactical backpack that was already packed with weapons, a map, and a set of unmarked black clothes, something he always kept for missions like this. Outside, the light of the day gradually faded, leaving the desert cloaked in darkness. Ethan stepped out into the parking lot, where his black Ford Bronco SUV was waiting. It looked like an ordinary vehicle, but inside it was a beast, equipped with a V8 engine, bulletproof glass, and a military-grade navigation system. He tossed his backpack into the back seat, slid into the driver's seat, and fired up the engine. The roar of the engine shattered the silence of the base. Before leaving, he sent an encrypted message through the old SEAL communication system. "Willow Creek, PA. Family in danger. Steel Reapers. Anyone available, assist." Within 30 seconds, 3 reply messages popped up from the brothers who had faced life and death alongside him. In Ohio, for hours out. From Virginia, 3.5 hours. Here in Maryland, 2.5 hours. Ethan smiled faintly at his network, those silent warriors who had never let him down. He hit the gas, and the Bronco shot out of Fort Irwin Gate, tires crunching on the dusty sand, heading northeast. The 300-mile road ahead was nothing compared to the deadly desert of Iraq he had driven through under enemy fire. But this time, it was more personal. Laura, Emma, Liam, they were the reasons he fought. The only light in the dark life of the SEAL. And now, the Steel Reapers had dared to lay a hand on them. As the SUV merged onto Highway 15, the headlights sliced through the darkness. Ethan gripped the steering wheel tightly, his eyes shining with a cold determination. He wasn't just there to protect his family. He was there to teach the Steel Reapers a lesson they would never forget. Willow Creek was about to become a battleground, and Ethan Carter, the silent hero, was ready to step into the fight. Ethan Carter's Ford Bronco barreled through the night on Interstate 80, its headlights slicing through the thick darkness of rural Pennsylvania. The clock on the dashboard read 8:47 p.m. meaning he covered nearly 150 miles in less than 2 hours, speeding over 80 miles an hour on those winding roads, a feat only a former SEAL like him would dare attempt. Outside, the wind howled through the slightly open window, carrying the biting chill of March, but inside Ethan, a smoldering fire was burning. He checked the special phone in the passenger seat, finding no new messages from Laura, but the emergency signal was still flashing red, a reminder that every second ticking by was a second his family was in danger. He pressed the contact button on his Bluetooth earpiece and called Jake Martinez, who was in charge of the rookie team at Fort Irwin. "Jake, give me an update on Pennsylvania. What do you have on the Steel Reapers?" Martinez's voice crackled through the earpiece, a bit fuzzy due to the weak signal. "I've dug through some old files, Ethan. The Steel Reapers aren't just a bunch of motorcycle thugs. They've been linked to extortion cases in Pittsburgh and Harrisburg for the past 2 years. But lately, their activity in the Tri-County area has surged, and there are rumors they're working for someone bigger, though it's unclear who. Be careful, they're not to be underestimated." Ethan nodded, even though Martinez couldn't see him. "Thanks, Jake. Stay in touch." He hung up the phone, his mind starting to piece together the puzzle. The Steel Reapers weren't just some random gang picking on Willow Creek for kicks. They had a purpose, and the new order that Victor Blade Russo mentioned to Laura was more than just empty threats. Ethan had faced all kinds of enemies in his 15 years as a SEAL, from terrorists in the Middle East to crime syndicates in South America, and he could smell a big conspiracy from a mile away. But this time, it was hitting home, and that changed everything. As the Bronco passed a sign reading 100 miles to Willow Creek, Ethan's phone buzzed again. It wasn't Laura. It was a call from a blocked number. He frowned and pressed the answer button on his headset. A deep, slightly crackling voice came through. "Carter, this is Colonel Reynolds. I hear you're leaving Fort Irwin for personal reasons. Is it related to Willow Creek?" Ethan recognized the voice immediately. Colonel John Reynolds, his former commander from SEAL Team 6, now working in a top-secret unit at DARPA. "Yes," Ethan replied, his voice cold yet cautious. "My family is being threatened. Steel Reapers. What do you know about them?" There was a brief silence before Reynolds answered, "More than you think. They're not just a bunch of thugs. There's intel that they're connected to an old Project Helix from World War II. I can't say much over the phone, but Willow Creek isn't just some random place. You're stepping into something bigger than your family, Ethan." "Helix Project?" Ethan repeated, his voice dropping slightly, laced with a hint of skepticism. "What do you mean?" "A motorcycle gang tied to the U.S. military from 80 years ago." Reynolds sighed through the line. "Not the current military. It's the remnants of something buried, and someone wants to dig it up. I've sent a few encrypted files to your email. Take a look, but don't let it slow you down. Family comes first, right?" Ethan tightened his grip on the steering wheel, feeling a jolt of electricity run through him. "Thank you, Colonel. I'll take care of it." He hung up, his eyes fixed straight ahead on the road, but his mind was a whirlwind. The name Helix stirred vague memories from clandestine meetings at the Pentagon, where he had overheard whispers about experiments that had been scrapped since the war. But why Willow Creek? And why Laura? He opened a small laptop on the passenger seat, a military device with satellite connectivity, and accessed an encrypted email from Reynolds. A file appeared. Project Helix 1943 to 1945. Objective: exploit unidentified technology from a mine in Pennsylvania. Outcome: sealed after an unexplained incident. Location: Willow Creek. The last line sent a chill down his spine. Suspected reactivation by a private organization, using Steel Reapers as a front. Ethan closed his laptop, his breath heavier than before. This was no longer just about protecting Laura and the kids from a bunch of thugs. It was a battle against something far beyond his understanding. But he didn't have time to analyze it. He pressed the gas harder, the Bronco accelerating to 90 miles an hour, the tires gripping the road as if they could sense the urgency themselves. As he crossed the state line into Pennsylvania, less than 50 miles from Willow Creek, the streetlights began to thin out, leaving him in darkness illuminated only by his headlights. He checked the clock. He had less than an hour until he arrived. But then in the rearview mirror, he spotted a shadowy figure of two motorcycles, their bright red headlights glaring, tailing him from about 200 yards away. Steel Reapers? Or something worse? Ethan smiled coldly, his hand moving down to the Glock 19 hidden under the seat. "You want to play?" he muttered. He didn't slow down. Instead, he hit the gas, ready to turn this highway into a battlefield if necessary. Willow Creek was waiting for him, and no one, not the Steel Reapers, not Project Helix, no force at all could stop him from protecting the ones he loved. The silent hero had arrived, and the confrontation was just beginning, under the dim moonlight on the Susquehanna River overpass. Ethan Carter stood beside his Ford Bronco, his steel blue eyes fixed on the two Steel Reapers groaning on the pavement. One of them clutched his bleeding knee, the bullet from Ethan's Glock 19 still warm in the air. The other, pale-faced and gasping, struggled under the weight of the question Ethan had just growled. "Who sent you?" The answer, Victor Russo and someone else, didn't shock him, but confirmed his worst fear. The Steel Reapers were just pawns in a much bigger game. Ethan didn't waste any more time. He tied the hands of the two men with zip ties from his tactical backpack, leaving them there on the deserted highway, then got into his truck. "Laura needs me," he murmured, starting the engine. The Bronco roared to life, speeding toward Willow Creek, less than 5 miles away. Through the earpiece, Ryan's voice came through. "Ethan, I just crossed Highway 81. I've spotted a few more motorcycles heading toward town. They're gathering their forces." Ethan tightened his grip on the steering wheel. "Got it. I'll head to Laura on Elm Street first. I'm on my way." As Ethan approached, Willow Creek continued its transformation from a town gripped by fear into an unyielding front line. At Ellen Hayes' hardware store, the crowd had swelled to over a dozen people. Ellen stood on a chair, her voice echoing through the small space. "We're not running anymore. This is our home, and I'd rather smash this store to pieces with my own hands than let the Steel Reapers take it away." A middle-aged man, Joe Jackson from the garage, raised his hand. "I have a few shotguns at home. Not many, but enough to make them think twice." Ellen nodded, her eyes shining with determination. "Good. Whoever can do something, do it. But we have to be smart. We can't confront them head-on, block their paths, create distractions, keep them off balance." Mrs. Sarah Miller, holding a pair of sewing scissors, added, "I know a few shortcuts through the old neighborhood. I can lead the kids out of danger if needed." None of them were warriors, but they were ordinary people pushed to their limits, and now they chose to stand up. A mile away, Tom Grayson and his maintenance crew had turned the warehouse into a temporary command center. On the table, alongside the map, were coils of barbed wire, several 6-foot metal rods, and an old radio that Tom had fixed up to eavesdrop on the Steel Reapers' frequency. "They're moving toward the old industrial area." One of the team members, named Mike, spoke up as the radio crackled with Victor Russo's voice. "Block the main roads. Don't let anyone in or out. It's time to show our strength." Tom slammed his hand down on the table, his voice shaking with anger. "Strength? Do they think they can crush us?" Tom's group didn't wait. They split into small teams, armed with barbed wire and metal rods, and headed toward the main intersections leading into the industrial area. In the darkness, they set up makeshift barriers that weren't enough to stop a whole convoy of motorcycles, but just enough to slow them down. "If Ethan Carter makes it in time," Tom muttered, "we'll have a chance." He didn't know Ethan, but from the way Laura talked about her brother in the park, he believed that man was Willow Creek's ray of hope. At the same time, Ethan drove into the town limits, the flickering streetlights casting shadows on his rugged face. He slowed down to 40 miles per hour as he reached Main Street, glancing over the unusually deserted streets. But then in the distance, about 200 yards away, he spotted the bright red headlights of at least 5 Steel Reapers motorcycles gathering near an abandoned gas station. They weren't just patrolling. They were sealing off the town. Ethan parked his car behind an old building, about 100 yards from the gas station, turned off the headlights, and stepped out with his Glock in hand. He moved swiftly through the darkness, pressing against the wall, his boots gliding quietly over the ground. As he got closer, he heard the voice of a guy from the Shadow Gang, the tall one who had confronted Laura in the park. Blade says tonight is the turning point. Those who don't follow will die. Another guy scoffed. Easy enough. The people around here only know how to run. But Shadow didn't get to finish his sentence before a figure burst out of the darkness. Ethan landed a punch right to his face, the strike lightning fast, sending Shadow crashing to the ground with blood pouring from his nose. The others panicked, pulling out knives and clubs, but Ethan was ready. He dodged a swing from a metal pipe, locked the guy's arm, and snapped his wrist with a sharp crack. Two more charged at him, but Ethan fired 2 shots, one into a shoulder, the other into a leg, causing both to tumble down, screaming in pain. In less than 30 seconds, 5 Steel Reapers lay sprawled around the gas station, while Ethan stood there, breathing steadily, his Glock still warm in his hand. He looked around and caught the terrified gaze of one thug who was still conscious. "Pass the word to Blade," he said, his voice deep like a death sentence. "I've arrived, and I'm not leaving until you all are gone." He turned back to his car, leaving the gangsters groaning in the darkness. Willow Creek is no longer a victim. From Laura holding her child tightly in their home, to Ellen and Tom leading the townspeople in resistance, and now Ethan infiltrating like a ghost, this town has become an unyielding fortress, ready to confront the encroaching darkness. If your heart beats to the fighting spirit of Willow Creek, where ordinary people rise up to protect their home, then hit that like button and subscribe to the Legendary Narratives channel right now. Join us as we watch how they turn darkness into light. The night in Willow Creek, Pennsylvania, felt heavy like a nightmare that hadn't ended. The streetlights flickered weakly along Main Street, where Ethan Carter had just left 5 Steel Reapers groaning around an abandoned gas station. His Ford Bronco rolled through the empty streets, less than 2 miles from Laura's place on Elm Street. In the rearview mirror, he could no longer see the bright red headlights of the motorcycle gang, but he knew they hadn't given up, and neither had he. In the small house, Laura Bennett huddled on the sofa, holding Emma and Liam tightly. The ticking of the wall clock echoed like the beating of her own heart. Each passing second a reminder that Ethan was getting closer. She peered through the gap in the curtains at the quiet street outside, but that silence didn't bring any sense of safety. It felt like the calm before a massive storm, and she could feel it in every breath she took. Emma yawned widely, her light blue eyes half closed, but Liam wasn't asleep. The little boy stared intently into the darkness outside the window, as if he could see something his mother hadn't noticed. "Mom," Liam whispered, his voice small but clear, "there's something underground. I can hear it." Laura frowned and leaned closer to her son. "Underground? What do you hear?" The boy furrowed his brow, as if trying to express a confusing feeling. A rumbling sound like machinery, but not like Dad Tom's machine. "It's really deep." Laura stroked Liam's hair, forcing a smile to comfort him, but inside, a new wave of unease washed over her. At the same time, at the old industrial park 3 miles from the town center, the darkness was ripped apart by the blinding white light from powerful floodlights. The abandoned coal mine, once the economic heart of Willow Creek decades ago, now trembled with the sound of heavy machinery. A large, unmarked truck rolled through the rusty gate, carrying a massive drill towering over 30 feet, its steel bit glinting in the lights. Victor Blade. Russo stood nearby, cigarette in hand, his cold eyes watching the Steel Reapers as they set up barriers around the area. Shadow, the tall, lanky guy with greasy hair, stepped up to Victor, his voice raspy from the dust. "Blade, the guys at the gas station just reported over the radio that a stranger took one of them down. Quick as a flash. What do you think?" Victor exhaled a puff of smoke, his gaze fixed on the drilling rig. "That guy is my problem later. Right now, let's focus on this. They want that thing underground, and I don't care what it is as long as I get paid." Shadow smirked. "The townsfolk are causing a ruckus. What if they come here?" Victor turned around, his eyes blazing, then let them die. But Victor didn't know that 50 yards away in the darkness, Ethan had arrived. He parked the Bronco behind an abandoned barn, turned off the headlights, and peered through his military binoculars. The rig looked nothing like anything he had ever seen, not your typical coal mining equipment, but a complex machine with strange sensors attached to its body. He whispered into his earpiece. Ryan, what do you see from your position? Ryan's voice crackled back. I'm near Highway 81, about 2 miles from you. I see more trucks, not Steel Reapers, but mercenaries. They're armed with rifles and professional gear. This isn't a motorcycle gang game anymore, Ethan. Ethan gritted his teeth, the memory of Colonel Reynolds' encrypted file flashing in his mind. Project Helix, an unidentified technology, sealed off after the incident. He lowered his binoculars and moved silently through the darkness, closing in on the drilling area about 20 yards away. The drilling rig roared, the bit sinking deep into the earth, and then he felt what Liam had mentioned, a faint vibration, not from the machinery, but from deep within the ground, like the slow heartbeat of something alive. As Ethan watched, a sleek black SUV rolled into the area, stopping near the drilling rig. Daniel Voss, the man in the gray suit who had eavesdropped on Victor in the truck, stepped out, his cold eyes scanning the scene. He approached a technician in a safety suit, his voice deep yet sharp. What's the depth? The technician checked the sensor screen, his voice slightly trembling. 100 feet, sir. But there's something strange. The seismic waves are unusual, as if whatever's down there is reacting. Daniel furrowed his brow, pulled out a tablet, and quickly scrolled through the data. The reaction? Good. That's the sign we need. He turned to Victor, his voice commanding. Russo, speed it up. I want on the surface before dawn. Victor smirked but didn't argue. He knew he had no choice in the matter. But Ethan, hidden in the shadows, heard everything. He whispered into his earpiece, Ryan, this isn't a mineral. It's something else, and they're waking it up. Suddenly, the ground shook more violently, not from the drilling rig, but from deep below, a low rumble like the whisper of an ancient machine. Ethan felt the hairs on the back of his neck stand up, and in that moment, he realized that Willow Creek was not just facing the Steel Reapers or mercenaries, but a horrifying secret that had been lying dormant beneath the earth for decades, now being dragged into the light. The low, rumbling sound from deep within the earth echoed to the old industrial area of Willow Creek, like the heartbeat of a giant waking from a long slumber. Ethan Carter, hidden behind a rusty wall just 20 yards from the drilling rig, felt the vibrations through his boots. It wasn't like the usual machinery noise. It was deeper, more ancient, as if something beneath the ground was breathing. Through his binoculars, he saw Victor Blade, Russo commanding the Steel Reapers to speed up the drilling, while Daniel Voss stood next to a black SUV, his fingers swiftly gliding over a tablet, his cold eyes gleaming with satisfaction. Ethan whispered into the earpiece, Ryan, do you feel this tremor? It's not normal. Ryan's voice crackled through the line, slightly interrupted. Yeah, Ethan, I'm 2 miles away, near Highway 81, and I can feel it too. The mercenaries are on edge. They don't know what's going on. Ethan furrowed his brow, his gaze fixed on the drilling rig. The steel drill bit had now penetrated over 150 feet deep, and with each rotation, it seemed to send out a stronger wave of vibrations, rippling to the ground like ripples on a lake. In Laura's house on Elm Street, 3 miles away, Liam sat up on the sofa, his eyes wide open. Mom, it's bigger now, he said, his voice trembling, but not out of fear, more like a strange feeling. Laura placed her hand on his shoulder, trying to stay calm. What's bigger, Liam? The boy pointed down at the floor. The vibration. It's saying something. I don't understand it, but I can hear it. Emma, though sleepy, also looked up and whispered, I feel it too, Mom, like there's someone down there. Laura hugged both of them tightly, her heart racing. She didn't know if the kids were imagining things or if they were truly sensing something she hadn't yet realized. Back at the drilling site, Daniel Voss stepped closer to the rig, his voice sharp, cutting to the roar of the engines. Give me an update. The technician, sweat streaming down his forehead, checked the sensor screen. 200 feet, sir. The seismic waves are 3 times stronger than any mineral deposit I've ever seen. There's something down there emitting energy. Daniel smirked, a rare smile breaking through his cold demeanor. Good. That's what we're after. Keep going. But Victor Russo was not satisfied. He stepped forward, his voice a low growl. Hey, Voss, what the hell is going on? The ground is shaking like it's about to crack open, and I don't see any cash like you promised. Daniel turned around, his gaze sharp as a knife. Russo, your job is to keep this area quiet. I'm not paying you to ask questions. Victor clenched his fists, but he didn't dare to push back. He knew he was facing something far beyond the control of the Steel Reapers. Ethan, from his hiding spot, heard every word clearly. He pulled out a small device from his backpack, a handheld seismometer he had brought from Fort Irwin, and set it down on the ground. The screen lit up, the needle fluctuating wildly, far beyond normal levels. This isn't a mineral, he muttered, his voice low as if speaking to himself. This is something alive, or once was. He recalled the file from Colonel Reynolds. Project Helix, unidentified technology, unexplained incidents. But now he realized it wasn't just technology, it was something ancient, older than the history of mankind. Suddenly, the drilling rig shook violently. The drill bit emitted a piercing screech as it struck something as hard as diamond. The ground cracked around the drilling area, small fissures spreading about 10 feet, and a strange pale blue light shot up from the earth, illuminating the astonished faces of the Steel Reapers. What the hell is that? Shadow shouted, stepping back a few paces, shielding his eyes from the blinding light. Victor turned to Daniel, growling, "What do you know that you haven't told me?" Daniel didn't respond. He stepped closer to Crack, the blue light reflecting in his eyes like a promise of power. "We just found it," he said, his voice deep and mesmerizing. "The Helix Project isn't a mineral mine. It's a key, a doorway, and we're about to unlock it." The technician shouted from the screen, "Energy surge. This thing, it's reacting to us." Ethan felt the ground beneath his feet shaking more violently, as if something below was waking up completely. He whispered into his earpiece, "Ryan, get ready. This isn't just machinery, it's conscious." Through binoculars, he saw Daniel giving orders. "Activate Protocol Delta. Erase all traces after we secure it." Victor heard this, his face going pale. "Erase? What do you mean?" Daniel turned around, his smile as cold as ice. "I mean, you and the Steel Reapers are no longer needed." The blue light from deep within the earth now flickered in rhythm, like a signal, and Ethan felt a strange pressure in his head, not pain, but like a whisper from far away. He looked through the crack and saw bizarre shapes emerging in the light, neither stone nor metal, but something that didn't belong to this world. Willow Creek was no longer just facing a gang or mercenaries. It was confronting a secret buried since prehistoric times, a doorway leading to other dimensions, and it was opening right before his eyes. The blue light flickering from the crack beneath the old Willow Creek industrial site illuminated the night sky, like the heartbeat of an ancient soul. Ethan Carter, hidden just 20 yards from the rig, felt a strange pressure in his head, not a voice, but a sensation, as if something beneath the ground was staring right at him. Through his binoculars, he saw Daniel Voss commanding the technician to increase the power, while Victor Blade Russo stood there, his face pale after Daniel's cold declaration. "You and the Steel Reapers are done." Ethan tightened his grip around the Glock 19, his breath steady but laced with simmering anger. He whispered into his earpiece, "Ryan, what do you see?" Ryan's voice crackled through, tense. "I'm near Highway 81, about 2 miles out. The mercenaries are setting up some strange devices around the area that look like bombs or some kind of transmitter. Ethan, we don't have much time." Ethan nodded, even though Ryan couldn't see him. He knew Delta Protocol wasn't just about wiping out the Steel Reapers. It would erase Willow Creek from the map entirely. In Laura's house on Elm Street, 3 miles away, Liam and Emma sat close to their mother, their eyes wide open, staring into the darkness. "Mom, it's calling," Liam said, his voice trembling but firm. Laura frowned, placing her hand on her son's shoulder. "Calling? Who's calling you?" Emma chimed in, her voice small but clear. "It's not anyone, Mom. It's something down there. I see images, like a door." Laura hugged both of them tightly, her heart racing. She didn't understand, but she felt a deep vibration, like a whisper from the earth, weaving its way into the minds of everyone in town. At the drilling site, the rig shook violently as the drill bit reached a depth of 300 feet. A small explosion echoed and a bright blue light flared up, illuminating the area as if it were daytime. From the crack, a strange object emerged, not rock or metal, but a smooth, curved structure about 10 feet long, pulsating with flickering light like a signal. The technician shouted, "We've got it, but the energy, it's out of control." Daniel Voss stepped closer, his eyes gleaming with fanaticism. "Perfect," he said, his voice deep and enchanting. "This is a key to the door to every dimension. We will unlock it." But Victor couldn't take it anymore. He lunged forward, grabbing Daniel by the collar, roaring, "You're lying to me? You're going to erase me after I do all your dirty work? I'm not going down that easily." Daniel shoved Victor away, pulling a handgun from his jacket and aiming it straight at his head. "You're just a tool, Russo. Expired tools get tossed aside." Ethan saw his chance. He burst out of the shadows, quick as a ghost, and punched a nearby mercenary right in the face, snatching his rifle. A gunshot rang out, but it wasn't from Ethan. It was Daniel. The bullet grazed Victor's shoulder, sending him crashing down, groaning in pain. Ethan took aim and took down 2 more Steel Reapers in the blink of an eye, then shouted, "Victor, follow me if you want to live." Despite the pain, Victor struggled to get up, his wild eyes fixed on Ethan, the enemy who had now become his only savior. Both of them ran toward the crack, where the strange object had now fully emerged from the ground, its blue light flickering faster, like a frantic heartbeat. Ethan felt the pressure in his head rising, not just vibrations, but images, invisible doors, distant worlds, and a choice unfolding like a beckoning invitation. He knelt down near the object, Victor gasping beside him. "What is it?" Victor asked, his voice trailing off. Ethan gazed into the light, sensing a power beyond human comprehension. "It's not just a door," he said. "It's a choice of dominance, understanding, or evolution. But everything comes at a cost." Daniel shouted from afar, "Carter, stop, or this whole town will disappear." He ordered the mercenaries to activate Protocol Delta, and the strange devices began to glow red, vibrating as if they were about to wipe everything out within a 5-mile radius. But Ethan didn't listen. He placed his hand on the object, not to control it, but to feel it. The images in his mind became clearer. A path of power, where humanity becomes divine. A path of knowledge, revealing the secrets of the universe. And a path of transformation, pushing humanity beyond its limits. But then he saw what Daniel and Victor couldn't see. Every path leads to destruction if humanity tries to force it. "No," Ethan murmured, his voice steady. "No control. Harmony." He pulled his hand back, stood up, and looked at Victor. "We don't open it. We let it teach us." Victor was bewildered. "Are you crazy? They'll kill us all." But Ethan shook his head, his eyes shining with a steely determination. "Not if I can stop them." The blue light dimmed a bit, as if responding to Ethan's choice, but the ground still shook. The door remained open, and the Delta Protocol was counting down. Ethan turned to Victor. "You know how it works. Help me or die with them." Victor, though in pain and confusion, nodded for the first time in his life. He chose to stand with the light. The climax had arrived, and the fate of Willow Creek now rested in the hands of a former SEAL and a traitor, facing a horrifying secret that was awakening. The blue light flickering from the strange object beneath the old Willow Creek industrial site gradually faded, like a heartbeat slowing down after a frenzy. Ethan Carter stood there, his hand just leaving the smooth 10-foot structure, his steel blue eyes shining with a rare sense of calm. His decision wasn't reckless. It felt in tune with the ancient secret that seemed to change everything. Victor Blade Russo, despite his shirt soaked in blood from a grazing bullet, looked at Ethan with mix of confusion and admiration. "What the hell did you just do?" Victor asked, his voice hoarse, clutching his wound. Ethan didn't respond right away. He turned back, looking through the crack where the blue light was now just a faint streak. "I'm not opening the door," he said, his voice low but firm. "I'm letting it talk to us." Before Victor could argue, the ground shook one last time, not a destructive tremor, but like a gentle sigh of relief, spreading to the drilling area and out across the town. 50 yards away, Daniel Voss shouted in fury, "Carter, you're ruining everything." He raised his gun, But as mercenaries' figures in black suits with rifles began to back away, their eyes wide with panic as they stared at the Delta Protocol equipment. The once bright red transmitters were now flickering erratically, no longer emitting the annihilation wave, but pulsing in rhythm with something underground. "Activate it now," Daniel yelled, but the technician near the drilling rig shook his head, his voice trembling. "It's not working anymore, sir. The energy, it's reversing." In Laura's house on Elm Street, 3 miles away from the drilling site, Liam and Emma both looked up from their mother's embrace. "It stopped," Liam said, his voice soft as if he had just woken up. Emma nodded, her bright blue eyes shining. "I feel like it's listening." Laura hugged both of them tightly, not fully understanding the children's words, but she sensed that the strange pressure in the air had lifted, replaced by a warm stillness, as if Willow Creek had just been freed from a curse. Ethan pulled Victor back from the crack, his eyes scanning the area. "Ryan," he said into the earpiece, "pull your team off Highway 81. Get the civilians away from the industrial zone." Ryan's voice came through, "Copy that. But Ethan, it's changing. I see the blue light spreading, but it's not destructive. It's like it's repairing." Ethan nodded, even though Ryan couldn't see him. He looked at Victor. "Do you want to live? Help me stop Daniel." Victor, despite the pain, managed a faint smile. "I've got nothing left to lose." Both of them charged forward, Ethan leading the way with his Glock held high, while Victor followed closely behind, wielding a metal rod he had picked up from a rubble. Daniel turned around, saw them, and fired a shot that grazed Ethan's shoulder, but he didn't slow down. He lunged at Daniel, pinning his arms to ground, sending Daniel's gun flying about 5 feet away. Victor kicked hard at a nearby mercenary, taking him down in a clumsy yet effective blow. "You've lost, Voss," Ethan growled, tightening his grip on Daniel's throat. "This doesn't belong to you." Daniel scoffed, even as he was pinned down. "You don't get it, Carter. It's awake. The Delta Protocol is just the shell we wanted it to break out of, but you've messed everything up." Ethan didn't respond. He stood up, yanked Daniel to his feet, and bound his hands with zip ties from a backpack. The blue light now spread, not just in the drilling area, but throughout the untouched town, merging like a wave of healing. At the Willow Creek Center, Ellen Hayes stood in front of the hardware store, still holding the hammer, watching the soft blue light flow down Main Street. The cracks in the glass from the steel reapers were now fading, as if being mended by an invisible hand. "What the hell is going on?" Joe Jackson, the one with the shotgun, muttered beside her. Ellen shook her head, her voice trembling yet filled with hope. "I don't know, but it's not hurting us." Tom Grayson and his maintenance team, a mile away from the warehouse, came to a halt amidst the barbed wire obstacles. A blue light flickered, and the map on the table vibrated slightly, the lines on the paper now pulsed in rhythm, as if the Willow Creek map were alive. "It's not destroying," Tom said, his voice choked with emotion. "It is trying to tell us something." Mike, holding the radio, nodded. "I hear whispers in my head, not words, but feelings. It's like it wants us to understand." Back at the drilling site, Ethan and Victor stood staring at the strange object, which was no longer just a standalone structure, but seemed to be a part of the earth itself, radiating energy through the rocks and soil. Daniel's mercenaries had fled, leaving behind the now-dead Delta Protocol equipment, transformed into useless metal chunks. Ethan looked at Victor and said, "You used to be the enemy of this town. Now you have a chance to make things right." Victor hung his head, his voice thick with emotion. "I don't know how to do anything but destroy, but if you say it's worth a shot, I'll give it a try." As the soft blue light faded away, the night sky over Willow Creek returned to its peaceful state, but it was no longer the same. The streets, the houses, even the air all carried a new feeling, as if the town had merged with something from below. Laura stepped out of the house, leading Emma and Liam into the front yard, watching the dim light dissolve into the darkness. "Uncle Ethan did it," she whispered, tears streaming down her cheeks. Liam held his mother's hand, smiling gently. "Not just Uncle Ethan, Mom. It's all of us." Ethan drove the Bronco into the town center, with Daniel tied up in the back seat and Victor sitting next to him, wearing a thoughtful expression through the windshield, He saw the townspeople starting to gather Ellen, Tom, Joe, Sarah Miller no longer afraid, but with the looks of people who had just found their way back home. Willow Creek hadn't crumbled, hadn't vanished. It had been reborn, not as a strange new place, but as the most complete version of itself, where humanity and ancient secrets coexisted in fragile peace. Dawn breaks over Willow Creek, Pennsylvania, the morning sun casting vibrant golden rays down on the streets that have changed forever. Ethan Carter drives a Ford Bronco down Main Street, with Daniel Voss tightly bound in the backseat, his eyes blankly staring out the window. Beside Ethan, Victor Blade, Russo sits silently, cradling his injured shoulder, his face stripped of the fierce demeanor of a Steel Reaper's leader, replaced instead by a contemplative expression, as if he's searching for something new in the ashes of the past. The car stopped in front of Ellen Hayes' hardware store, where a small crowd had gathered. Ellen stood among them, still holding the hammer, but now she no longer looked defensive. Her brown eyes sparkled with newfound belief. Tom Grayson, with his silver-white hair, stepped out from the group of townsfolk, holding the Willow Creek map that now shimmered with strange outlines in the morning light. "Ethan Carter," Tom said, his voice deep and warm. "We heard gunfire coming from the industrial area. What happened?" Ethan stepped out of the car, yanked Daniel out, and forced him to kneel before the crowd. "This is the one behind it all," he said, his voice deep yet resonant. "Daniel Voss is not a Steel Reaper. It's him and his organization that awakened what lies beneath. But it hasn't destroyed us. It chose to stay with us." The crowd murmured, their expressions shifting from doubt to curiosity. Ellen stepped forward, locking eyes with Ethan. "What do you mean? What does that thing do?" Ethan turned to Victor, signaling him to speak. Victor cleared his throat, his voice raspy yet filled with a rare sincerity. "I used to think it was a weapon or some gold or silver to sell my soul for. But Carter," he saw what I couldn't. "It's not something to control. It's a part of this town for a long time now. And now it's changing everything." He pointed toward the industrial area, where the blue light had faded, leaving behind an oddly serene calm. Laura Bennett ran down the street, leading Emma and Liam. She threw her arms around Ethan, tears streaming down her cheeks. "You did it," she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. Ethan brushed his sister's hair back, smiling softly, the first smile he had given since leaving Fort Irwin. "Not just me," he said, looking around the crowd. "It's all of us." Emma held Liam's hand, pulling him forward. "Ethan," Emma said, her voice clear, "I see it in my mind like a door, but it doesn't open us somewhere else. It opens within us." Liam nodded, his eyes shining with a wisdom beyond his years. "It doesn't want to destroy. It wants us to remember what we've forgotten." Ethan knelt down, looking straight into the eyes of his two nephews. "Remember what, Liam?" The boy smiled, an innocent yet profound smile. "That we are part of something bigger, not just Willow Creek, but everything." The crowd fell silent, listening to the children's words. Ellen set down the hammer and stepped closer to Laura. "I don't fully understand," she said, her voice trembling, "but I can feel it. Last night, when the blue light swept through, the shattered glass of my window healed. It's not magic, but it's as if the town is healing itself." Tom Grayson nodded, holding up the map. "Look at these lines. They're not just streets. They're veins, like blood vessels. Willow Creek isn't just where we live, it lives with us." Ethan stood up and looked around. The houses along Main Street now had a different vibe, not exactly new, but more complete, as if each brick in every window was infused with energy from the earth itself. The trees in Memorial Park, half a mile away, swayed gently, their leaves a vibrant green, as if they were nourished by a fresh burst of life. "It doesn't change us into something else," Ethan said, his voice ringing out like a declaration. "It helps us become our best selves." Victor stepped forward, his voice low but clear. "I used to lead the Steel Reapers to destroy this place. But last night, when Carter gave me a chance, I felt different. I don't want to tear it down anymore. I want to build it up." The townspeople looked at him, their expressions shifting from hatred to skepticism, and then a few nodded. Joe Jackson, the one with the shotgun, spoke up. "If you're telling the truth, Russo, then prove it. We don't forgive easily, but we're willing to give you a chance. Ethan patted Victor on the shoulder, signaling him to stand with the crowd. He will prove it, he said, but right now we need to understand this. He pointed toward the industrial area. What's beneath the ground, the Helix Project, isn't a weapon or a gateway to conquest. It's a part of Willow Creek from thousands of years ago. When I chose not to control it, it chose to stay, not to destroy, but to support us. Laura held Ethan's hand, her voice soft yet firm. You say it's a part of us, but how do we live with it? Ethan looked at his sister, then at the crowd: Ellen, Tom, Joe, Sarah Miller, and other familiar faces from Willow Creek. We learn, he replied, not to use it, but to listen to it. The kids understand that before we do. Emma and Liam see what we've forgotten, that we don't need control everything to survive. The morning sunlight illuminated everyone's faces, and for the first time in many days, Willow Creek no longer felt haunted. The streets didn't transform into a strange fairyland. Instead, they became more real than ever, a small town in Pennsylvania, but now a unique place on Earth where people and ancient secrets breathed in harmony. Ethan looked around, sensing the change not just in the scenery, but in the very people before him. They weren't just surviving. They had rediscovered the deeper meaning of their lives. The midday sun poured down on Willow Creek, Pennsylvania, draping the town in a warm golden hue, as if trying to soothe the scars left by the horrific night before. Outside Ellen Hayes' home goods store on Main Street, a crowd gathered around Ethan Carter, Laura Bennett, and Victor Blade Russo, their eyes no longer filled with fear, but instead brimming with a mix of curiosity and pride. Daniel Voss, bound and restrained, sat silently under the watchful eye of Joe Jackson, his gaze now vacant, as if all his ambitions for power had evaporated along with the Delta Protocol. Ethan stepped up onto an old wooden crate that Ellen had brought out, looking down at the familiar faces of Willow Creek. We made it, he said, his deep voice ringing out like an unshakable affirmation. Not because of me, not because of guns, but because of all of us, from Ellen, Tom, to each and every person standing here. We didn't let this town be wiped off the map. We kept it alive. The crowd nodded. A few people clapped, the sound of applause spreading like a gentle wave in the calm air. Laura stood beside him, her hands tightly gripping Emma and Liam. She looked at her two children, noticing their eyes shining in a strange way, not with the innocence of youth, but with a deep understanding, as if they had seen something far beyond their years. Ethan is right, Emma spoke up, her clear voice ringing out amidst the crowd. He doesn't want us to be afraid. He wants us to see everything as it really is. Liam nodded, adding, like when I looked at the tree in the park this morning, it wasn't just a tree, it was a part of us. Ellen Hayes stepped forward, placing her hand on Emma's shoulder, smiling at Laura. The kids are right. I can't explain it, but I feel it. My store, the street, even that old oak tree out there, all of it feels more alive. It's not magic. It's like we finally understand where we belong. Tom Grayson held up his map, the once flickering lines now steady, forming a harmonious network. Look at this, he said, his voice choked with emotion. Willow Creek isn't just rocks and dirt, it's part of something bigger. And so are we now. Victor Russo, despite still nursing his aching shoulder, stepped forward into the wary gaze of the townspeople. I don't expect your forgiveness, he said, his voice rough yet sincere. I once led the Steel Reapers to tear this place apart. But last night, when Carter gave me a chance, I saw things differently. I don't want to be a destroyer anymore. He looked at Ethan, then at the crowd. If you give me a place among you, I will help rebuild, not with blood, but with my hands. Sarah Miller, who had once trembled in fear when the Steel Reapers threatened her daughter, nodded slowly. Prove it, Russo. We don't forget, but we won't turn our backs on anyone who wants a change. Ethan patted Victor on the shoulder, his eyes shining with a quiet confidence. He turned to the crowd. What's beneath us, the Helix Project, isn't something we own. It's been a part of Willow Creek long before we got here. When I chose not to control it, it didn't destroy us. It taught us how to live with it. The kids see that most clearly. He looked at Emma and Liam, then turned to Laura. We don't need to dominate to survive. We need to understand ourselves and understand this place. The sunlight filtered to the canopy along Main Street, and for the first time, the townspeople noticed small yet profound changes. The houses were no longer just lifeless bricks. They exuded a strange harmony, as if designed to a rhythm that echoed from the earth itself. Memorial Park, half a mile away, now pulsed with new life greener grass, trees swaying as if chatting with the breeze. "It doesn't turn us into something else," Laura said, her voice gentle yet strong. "It makes us more truly ourselves deeper." In the distance, the sound of police cars echoed, not the blaring sirens of an emergency, but the slow arrival of Sheriff Davis and a few patrol cars from a neighboring county. They had come to apprehend Daniel Voss. But upon seeing the peaceful town, Davis paused, taken aback. "What's going on here, Carter?" he asked, his voice raspy with age. Ethan offered a faint smile. "A battle and a new beginning. You can take Voss away. We'll handle the rest." As the police car drove away with Daniel, the people of Willow Creek began to disperse, not to flee, but to return to their lives a life that now held a new meaning. Ellen reopened her shop, but now she sold stories about the town's rebirth at night. Tom led the maintenance crew back to park, tending to the trees that felt more like friends than just a job. Victor, under Joe's watchful eye, started repairing the roads that the steel reapers had once destroyed, each shovel of dirt a gesture of atonement. Ethan stood with Laura, Emma, and Liam in front of Memorial Park, watching the kids play on the grass. "What now, big brother?" Laura asked, her voice soft as a breeze. Ethan looked at his sister, then gazed out at the town stretching before him. "We learned to live with it," he replied. "Not control it, but to grow alongside it. Willow Creek isn't just home. It's a bridge between us and something greater." The sunlight shone on their faces, and Willow Creek stood there not as a town transformed into a strange land, but as a place more real than ever, where people and ancient secrets intertwined in a new rhythm of life. It didn't just survive. It became a symbol of coexistence, a reminder that sometimes victory isn't about control, but about understanding and accepting one's place in the vast universe. Thank you for joining us on this inspiring journey through Willow Creek, where Laura, Ethan, and the entire small town transformed darkness into a beacon of hope. If you felt moved by the power of family and resilience, please hit like and subscribe to Legendary Narratives, so you won't miss out on more incredible adventures like this one. We want to extend a heartfelt greeting to each of you. Your support keeps this story alive, from the unity of the townspeople to the lesson of embracing harmony instead of control. Willow Creek reminds us that sometimes the greatest victory is rediscovering ourselves. We'll see you in the next video. Stay tough, stay proud, and see you soon.